friend, thank you for joining me and welcome to Nevermore House. So we've actually got two baking projects we're working on today. First one is a no-knead crusty bread. I haven't made bread in a very long time, and the last time I did, it did not come out great. It was dense, it was flat, it just wasn't it. So we're gonna give it another shot since we're gonna be here in the kitchen anyway. Second one is a dessert bread. We're gonna go ahead and make banana bread with sour cream. Now, when it comes to baking, I traditionally will always stick to the recipe just because I'm not a professional baker and I'm not 100% confident in varying from that. When it comes to traditional cooking, I will because I'm more confident doing that. I've been doing that since I was 12 years old. So I'm more confident in that. So the only variation I'm gonna go ahead and do in these recipes is the banana bread. We're gonna go ahead and add chocolate chips. And then the crusty bread, I'm just gonna go ahead and use a couple tips that I've seen used in other baking videos, baking bread videos, and things I've read in a couple blogs. So that's the only variation we're gonna do from that, but I'll go over that when we go over the ingredients and the directions. All right, let's go ahead and get started.
And we're gonna start with our crusty bread. Here we've got some warm water, some active dry yeast, some salt, and some bread flour. And here I'm just pouring in our warm water into a 5-quart stainless steel bowl. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add 1 packet of the active dry yeast. And I'm just gonna stir it up, make sure everything gets dissolved. And then a couple of tips that I read on some blogs and some videos that I watch is you wanna let your yeast bloom for at least 5 minutes. So that's what I'm gonna go ahead and do. Even though the recipe itself says you can go ahead and just add salt right in, but I've read that salt can kill yeast, so I didn't want to do that. Didn't want some dense flat bread again, so we're gonna go ahead and let our yeast bloom. I think I let it go for about 7 minutes. So I'm just stirring it up, making sure everything's mixed really well. Three and a quarter cups of bread flour, and I'm just measuring it, making sure it's level. We don't want to add any extra flour. We don't want to dry bread. So I'm just making sure we've got a level cup each time. And here I'm just adding in half a tablespoon of some locally sourced salt. And I'm just making sure that salt is mixed into the flour before I start mixing up everything with our yeast water. And it's right at this point that I really start questioning whether or not this recipe is going to work. The dough seems a little bit dry for me because the recipe says that it should be a sticky dough, but it's definitely a trust the process moment. The dough eventually does get to a nice sticky consistency. Here I'm just placing the bread dough in the oven with just the light on, no heat, just for it to proof for about 2 hours. Alrighty, and now that our dough has been proofing for about 2 hours, I've just got some parchment paper here, and I'm just spreading out a little bit of bread flour so we can go ahead and dump our bread dough onto this paper and get it shaped and ready for the Dutch oven. And you can see here, it's a very sticky dough, so it takes a little bit of effort to go ahead and get it peeled away from the sides of the bowl, but slow and steady, and it eventually does start to pull away. And now the recipe calls for pulling in the sides and folding it into the middle. So that's just what I'm doing here, just pulling in all the sides, getting it to form into a nice ball. And then what we're going to do is eventually take that corner of the parchment paper and roll over the dough ball into the center of the parchment paper. And you can see here, it is a very sticky dough as the recipe says it should be, so I was very happy with this progress. And here I'm just playing with the dough a little bit, trying to get that little bit of excess flour that's on the parchment paper sprinkled around the sides and a little bit on the top, to try to get that nice crusty, floury topping for when it's done baking. And here I'm just pulling out my Dutch oven that's been preheating in there for about 40 minutes in a 450-degree oven. And you can see here our Dutch oven is definitely at temperature. You can see that steam rising out of it. So I'm just sliding over our bread dough ball, and I'm just gonna go ahead and get this situated right in the Dutch oven. Just be very careful, as that Dutch oven is incredibly hot, as you can tell. And now we're just getting our dough into the oven at 450 degrees, covered for 35 minutes. And here I'm just going back in after I just put it in, because I forgot to go ahead and put the little score marks, so that's just what I'm doing, just for decorative purposes. It's not necessary. But I figured if I was trying it, I might as well go full force. And fun fact, right here, I burned my pinky. Our bread has been baking for 35 minutes, so I'm just going to remove the cover, and then we're gonna let it bake for an additional 15 minutes uncovered. It's been 15 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove our bread from the oven. At this point, it's looking nice and golden brown. It's looking great. So I'm very happy visually with how it turned out. And here I'm just gonna go ahead and remove the bread from the Dutch oven to stop that cooking process and get it on a wire cooling rack to go ahead and cool down. And listen to that crust. And this is our banana bread, and we're gonna go ahead and get started on that recipe now. Okay, so the recipe calls for bananas, sour cream, vanilla extract, eggs, salt, baking soda, butter, baking powder, flour, brown sugar, and regular granulated sugar as well. I have chocolate chips here because I am adding those in. I like chocolate chip banana bread as opposed to just regular banana bread. So that's my extra addition. That's the only variation that I'm doing off of this recipe. Other than that, I am going to follow it to a T. So here I've got 6 tablespoons of melted and cooled butter. I'm just go ahead and adding in some vanilla extract. I don't measure vanilla, I measure with the heart. Next, we're going in with 3 eggs. And now we're going in with 4 small bananas, very ripe. The recipe calls for 2 to 3 bananas, but I add a little bit extra. So I'm gonna go ahead in with a fork and just mash those up just a little bit, get them broken up some. And now I'm gonna go ahead in with half a cup of sour cream. My store only had light sour cream. I don't taste a difference, so it's fine to me. And here I'm gonna go in with the rest of the vanilla because there was only a little bit left, so I just added that. And I'm going in with an immersion blender, which is why I wasn't too concerned about making sure those bananas were really mashed up. So I'm just going in here, getting everything whipped up really well. And I've got a 1/3 cup here, so I'm going in with 2 of these for a total of 2/3 cup of granulated sugar. And now I'm going in with half a cup of packed light brown sugar. And going in with 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And a teaspoon of baking soda. Then I'm going in with half a teaspoon of salt. And I'm just gonna go ahead and get that all mixed up before we add in our flour. And now I'm going in with 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And we're just gonna mix that until well combined. You don't wanna over mix the batter. And here I'm just adding in our chocolate chips. These are semi-sweet baking chocolate chips. And then I'm also gonna go in with some dark chocolate oat milk chocolate chips. I don't have a measure for those. Those were just some that I had on hand that I wanted to use up. And I'm just barely mixing in the chocolate chips. You don't wanna, like I said, overwork it. You just wanna incorporate it. And here I've got a 6x6 baking dish that I'm just spraying with some nonstick spray. And we're gonna go ahead and get our batter nice and spread out in that baking dish. And you can see I definitely had some extra batter. I could have used a larger baking dish, but I don't actually have an 8x8, I just have a 9x13, so that was a little too big. So here we're just gonna go ahead and get this in the oven at 350 degrees. And we're gonna bake it for 40 minutes. Now that our banana bread has been baking for 40 minutes, the recipe calls to go ahead and tent it with aluminum foil. So you can see here, I'm just checking on it. The sides are looking nice and golden, giving it the little jiggle test. The center is not quite set. I'm just tapping on that, making sure. So now I'm gonna go ahead in with some aluminum foil and just go ahead and get that tented up. And then now we're gonna bake it for an additional 15 minutes. Now our banana bread, it's been about 15 minutes. It should be done. So I'm just go ahead checking on it, taking off that aluminum foil, and you can see it is nice and golden brown. It's looking perfect at this point. So I'm just removing it from the oven so it can come down to room temperature.
All right, friends, so we've got our fresh baked bread here. We're gonna go ahead and cut into it and give it a try. You can hear that nice crust. Look at that. Looks great. We're gonna go ahead and put a little bit of butter on here, try it out, see how it goes. That's delicious. Yep. Very happy with my first attempt at bread, but I'm definitely happy with the way this turned out. It's delicious. Alrighty, so our banana bread is all done and cooled. So we're gonna go ahead and cut into this, give it a taste test, and see how it is. All right. Look at that. Chocolate chips are nice and spread throughout. Looks really good. All right. That's a winner. Oh yeah, it's definitely moist, it's soft, it's delicious. My niece is gonna love this. My sister too.
Thank you for joining me in today's baking adventures. I appreciate you all stopping by and watching, and we'll see you the next time we're in our kitchen. Have a great day. Bye.